Hello everybody and welcome to the Sovereign Village Project. I'm out here doing our early planting and I wanted to kind of fill everybody in on what I'm doing in the hopes that they might get some inspiration of early crops they can get into the ground. It's really a bit of a misconception that you need to wait until the last frost date to start planting. Of course that's true with many crops, but there are so many other options that do really well in cool weather. So some of the things that we're doing that are kind of proven winners here in the cool weather is first and foremost radishes. Radishes to me are not a garnish, they're a staple crop because they do so well and they go to such proportions here. Even in soil that's not very good here in Tennessee, I've had phenomenal success with radishes. And when they get really big, really big, I found that they kind of lose their flavor, which could be seen as a bad thing, but I can kind of see that as a good thing if you're not fond of that spiciness. They become more like a potato. I mean, they're not the same texture or anything as a potato, but they can act like that more in dishes. You can roast them, add them to anything you're frying up. If I'm making a soup or a chili, they go in just like an onion, and they add an incredible flavor. There's a lot of recipes where you can really kind of feature the radish as a main thing, where you can roast it or you can fry it and put garlic and herbs on it, and it's really delicious. So maybe start to change your thinking about radishes. Even if you're not too fond of radishes, I really advocate growing them anyway because so many times most of us have been exposed to radishes as essentially like a garnish in a salad, and you eat it raw in the midst of a salad and it doesn't always go with the flavor. So I would really recommend experimenting with radishes. Just grow them, they're easy, and there's a lot of different options you can try with them, and you can eat the leaves. I put the leaves in all sorts of salads. The leaves are a little bit spiny, so you might want to be careful of that in dishes. Some are more spiny, some are less spiny. And then I'll also roast the leaves, I'll fry them up, I'll treat them kind of like a collard green or anything like that. So it's an incredibly diverse plant with so many uses, and it does so well in cool weather. I have little ones starting to come up here, and we're just barely in March, so they do really well in cold weather. I really am partial to the heirloom mixes from Baker Creek, just because they have such a wide variety of radishes. If one particular variety in the mix isn't well suited to your climate, the other ones might be. There's a really good likelihood that something's going to do really well. And another good way is also if you have any good local feed stores that are locally owned and operated, they often only will carry the radish seeds that are, and any other seeds that are adapted to that particular climate. So lots of radishes. We're doing a ton of raw radishes and a ton of greens because, of course, greens do really well in cool weather. There's a lot of lettuces, spinaches, kales, things like that that just do phenomenally. They can take a frost and just not even worry about it. Some of them are improved in flavor even with a frost. And so what we're mainly doing in this garden is interspersing. We'll do one row of greens and one row of root crops, which is also could be turnips, does phenomenal in cold weather, beets, which also has edible greens like the turnips. Many of these root crops have edible greens and tubers. So we'll do those type of tuber plants interspersed with greens, kales, lettuces, spinaches, chicories, things like that. And of course we'll do a lot of green onion and herb type plants in between that also tolerate cold temperatures. But mainly our staples here are greens and root crops. And we intersperse them because that way the root crops are taking up a lot of underground space and the greens one are taking more above ground space. And that really enables you to get maximum production out of your beds. And then this trellis back here, we'll be running peas. A lot of sugar snap peas do really well in cold weather, and they're in the back so we don't want them blocking up light, so that's the north end of the garden up there. So we'll have our peas and tall things up there, and then all of these beds here, which are no dig beds. All of those will then be mostly, for the most part, root crops and greens interspersed with each other. So I'll keep you posted on the progress of that, but I wanted to encourage you to go out and try some cool weather crops. Really, gardening shouldn't be something that you see as something to do in the spring. Gardening should be year-round. There should be no start and finish dates. Yes, there are days when you have a lot more planting to do, but my mindset is anytime I plant anything, another seed has to go in the ground right there. My beds need to be producing year-round. Of course, that gets really tricky in the winter, but we're going to be experimenting a lot this winter with extremely cold, harder things, kales, perennials, and things that can really take a lot of cool weather, as well as cover crops. Because cover crops don't only improve the soil for us, we can also use a lot of those cover crops for our animals. For example, clovers and buckwheat can do really well for rabbits and chickens and things like that. So that's what we're doing, and one last thing I want to show you that might be helpful if you're planting early. I will take just about anything I can find that is clear. In this case, this is a refrigerator shelf from an old refrigerator. And I'll plant something in a little spot where it's heavily mulched around it. So that makes kind of a little box for it. And then I'll place this right over it. So if there's any frosts, I can still get production out there and not have everything killed by frost. Of course, I can't do that with the entire garden, so I'm kind of selective. My things that are maybe a little less likely to take a frost, I plant in small areas that I can do that with. Most of the beds I'm not doing that with. It's just kind of a little exception so I can get a few things really early. Like I said, we have some radishes already going right now, and we have some decent sized greens going right now too. This guy's looking a little sad, but there are just a lot of little hacks and tricks and tips you can do to get production started early and cover that hungry phase of the year. And of course, it's a great time to be starting seedlings right now too. Tomatoes, peppers, everything, it's really time in most parts, at least in the continental US. So everyone, happy planting. Hope your gardening goes great this year. Happy homesteading. Stay safe and be well.